While I was saying boo earns, here's your look at the brand new Super7 The Simpsons Ultimates C. Montgomery Burns. To friends, he's known as Monty, but to you, it's Mr. Burns. Evil billionaire C. Montgomery Burns is the boss every worker drone loves to hate, but you'll love this 7-inch scale, highly articulated Ultimates figure of Montgomery Burns, which comes with interchangeable heads and hands as well as a variety of accessories, including Bobo, Blinky, the $1 trillion bill, and other items from memorable moments in the show. This made-to-order The Simpsons Ultimates figure of Montgomery Burns will make an excellent addition to any collection. That fellow at Radio Shack said I was mad. Well, who's mad now? Just before, of course, we get a closer look, don't answer that. Before, of course, we get a closer look at the new Simpsons Ultimates Montgomery Burns, let's grab the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands. If I'm reading this correctly, then Old Man Burns stands about 6.5 inches in height, or the figure's about 17 centimeters tall. Sharing with you the very few Simpsons characters we did actually get in regular casual clothing, although it's strange to say casual clothing and bring in Krusty the Clown. The only other character I can actually think of is that we're also getting Ralph. Think of it just for a second that we're getting ourselves Ralph before we actually got ourselves a Bart. Speaking of Bart, though, here's also what he looks like as Bartman's Bart. I mean, obviously he's going to be the apparent heir of the Burns family fortune. But again, the fact that they chose the characters that they did, it's just a crying shame. The fact that we are, again, getting ourselves a Ralph, but never once getting ourselves just a regular dressed Bart Simpson, really shows what Super7 had planned poorly, I feel, when it comes to Simpsons licensing and all the waves moving forward. C. Montgomery Burns does pretty good for himself for the accessory counts, although I have to kind of question some of the choice that Super7 made. Here we go again, talking about the choices and directions that Super7 went with their figures. Some of the accessories may have your head scratching, whether it's bald or not. First, the figure comes with, I suppose, the smallest of the accessories. He comes with $1 trillion. You can see this is the first and only time I'll be holding a $1 trillion. Is there even a $1 trillion bill? Anybody tells me in the comment section, oh, I have a $1 trillion bill in my house right now, I'm probably going to call you a fibber face. On one side it's printed, of course on the other side it also has the face there as well. Nice the fact that they would actually include this, as of course it is a referenced accessory in one of the episodes. Speaking of referenced accessories, the figure also comes included with Bobo. I like the look of Bobo. If I was to nickel and dime the details on the figure, I feel like in certain scenes, Bobo looks like he's actually got a wad of pink chewing gum there on the top of his head. But other than that, it looks pretty good like Bobo. Even has the wandering, drooping eye on the one side. He does have what seems to be gripping hands suitable for holding Bobo. He has one hand that's really the best for holding Bobo. It just basically clips onto his leg, and he holds it really quite well. Speaking of also hands, the figure also comes included 2 pairs of those gripping hands that can be swapped out with sort of the gestured hands that he has on either sides of his forearms right now. He also gets a pair of relaxed hands. Again, can just be popped out. And I guess supposing whether you wanted to use these hands, I sort of did start the review with those hands being the excellent hands. I suppose you could also say that these are better, more suitable for the excellent hands. And again, these would just be a case of popping them out from the existing hands that he has. So let's just, remove these right now. Of all the Simpsons figures, I actually found that Mr. Burns had the easiest hands to change out. Yet, ironically enough, he seemed the hardest figure to get out of his packaging. If you've ever gotten anything out of Super7 packaging, you know the frustrations that go then along with it. I mean, the figures themselves are always nightmares to try to get out of their plastic prisons. Mr. Burns seemed to be the worst. Would you say that that's his most excellent hands? I don't know. But the figure is, like I said, his hands are pretty easy to change. We'll come back to the figure in a second. He also comes included with the Burns Weekly. It's too late. This has actually been done here in plastic. I always really root for the idea of getting accessories, even if they're supposed to be intended paper. Put them on plastic. Plastic holds out a lot better. For all the things that were paper accessories that end up being printed on paper, never really last the lineage of however long I have these figures in my collection. I'd rather just actually, if they just release these in softer plastic. Yes, it's kind of the softer plastic that's pretty much close to like a fruit roll-up, but at least it's something I know that's going to last over time. Paper is just going to get ripped, it's going to get crumpled. I favor it. If I was to put down my vote, I would put it down for plastic paper accessories rather than actual paper accessories. The last thing that Burns comes with before we start looking at his head sculpts is he also comes with Blinky the Three-Eyed Fish. Blinky's made several appearances in the episodes, one that he's actually been swimming in stream. There's also one, of course, the most notable one is where the Burns, of course, invites himself over to the family household for dinner, and then they proceed to slice up Blinky the one-eyed fish, three-eyed fish. He's nicely been prepared. It looks like on a bed of lettuce leaves. He has no dome or anything over top of that, so there's no way to fool Mr. Burns into what he's going to be cutting up at the family dinner table. But again, like, it's a nice little accessory that they include. There's really no way to remove Blinky. He's permanently attached to the display base or platter base. So again, a nice little accessory with that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the heads. Now, the problem I have really with the heads is the choices that they then made. If we were to look at defaulted Mr. Burns' head, I mean, from the front it looks good. From the side, it kind of looks like old Mr. Burns, like from the earlier Simpsons episodes. The one thing that unfortunately is lacking is the fact that they decide to give him a head that's very similar, other than just having his eyes closed. Like he's really just relishing in whatever evil plan he's plotting. Gentlemen, to evil. The thing about it, though, is it's pretty much identical to the head that he has right now, other than the fact his eyes are blinked. That's it. That's all that's different between the two. He also has the screaming mad power head sculpt, which, if really given the choice of the three, I'm just going to choose that anyways to display with the figure. But I feel like if not having that, the other two head sculpts are just pretty much identical to one another. And yet, where is there ever a head sculpt for Mr. Burns where he just has a big smile on his face? He's often smiling in the episodes. Why wouldn't they have chosen to give one of those head sculpts in favor of one of these instead? Maybe even just doing away with this one altogether. I would have just rather traded this one in for a open eye Mr. Burns that has a big smile on his face. And yet we don't get one at all with this release. Bummer. What's also a bummer is changing out the head sculpts, because it just pops. It's just a case of popping the head off the ball joint. That's not really a hard thing to do. But unfortunately, though, the times that I've done this, I don't know if you guys can actually see this at the base of the neck, I have scraped away all the plastic at the bottom of the neck. Now, obviously, if you're going to be putting this onto the ball joint, first of all, it's not the easiest thing at all. I would certainly suggest heating this up in hot water. Putting this onto the head, though, the number of times that I've done this, popping the head off, you can see just what little times I've done it. It's scraped the plastic right at the bottom. I mean, you would never really see it because it's inside the collar of his shirt, but it just really sucks. I mean, there's really no way around it, I suppose. It being the fact that the quarters are so close to his collar, you can see also as well, there's a little bit of yellow on the inside there too. So it's scraped some of that off onto the collar. Bummer. My favorite of the three head sculpts by far is this one right here. And again, we're going to have to get down to the ball joint. The ball joints on this guy, I don't know why. They're so difficult to get on there. But it's the Mad Power Mr. Burns. Nice looking head sculpt. And by far my favorite of the three. Just again, like, had they only just traded out one of these, maybe keep this one, and then instead of maybe having this one, having the smiling face, I think would have been the ideal head sculpts to include with Mr. Burns. Ultimately, though, this is going to be the one I'm going to be displaying on the shelf. I just love the way they've sculpted the tongue here. Whatever criticisms, by the way, I do say about Super 7, there's no denying the fact that the actual figures we get, though having, yes, quality issues here and there, have been really sculpt-wise, have been really quite good. Okay, so that's the head sculpt we're going to stick with right now. Just a stellar-looking sculpt for Mr. Burns. For the rest of his body, now, they're opting go with this outfit. Depending on when you watch, of course, the series, he has either like this outfit, he has a jacket very similar with like a pink tie. There's also been times, of course, he wears himself a blue jacket, blue pants. They opted instead to kind of go with like the forest green jacket and forest green pants. Not a bad idea at all. Black tie is nicely painted. There's a few little areas where you can kind of see a little bit of the smudging of the black onto the white shirt, but overall, like, the paint's pretty clean on this guy. As we spin the figure around, of course, he does have the notable hump that Mr. Burns also has developed in the series as well. It's a nice, lean-looking Mr. Burns, but again, like, the figure looks great. I just think maybe some of the choices when it came to arriving on the head sculpts, the three that they chose, either include a fourth head sculpt, which we know would never really have happened. That would have just upped the ante on the price of the figure. But at the very least, again, I think that one of the head sculpts probably could have been traded out instead for a smiling face instead. Now, for the head sculpt and the ball joints and all the figure's articulation below that, the head's going to be on a ball joint. I still don't think I've got it all the way on there. The head does look down, it looks up, and looks back and forth, but I'm definitely going to have to heat this before we jump over to the turntable. I had that on originally, but I guess the plastic had cooled. By the way, this one hasn't scraped as much as this one right here. I don't know, maybe I just ended up putting this head sculpt on the neck instead too many times. But yeah, like, this one hasn't scraped as much, but I'm sure it's gonna happen anyways. As for the shoulders are a little tighter on the figure, but again, I'd much rather tight joints than really overly loose joints. It allows the arms to rotate all the way around on both sides there. Once again, only single hinges on the elbows, whatever your feelings may be about single hinges on these figures. I mean, again, for a cartoon character, it doesn't really bother me. If it's supposed to be more of a realistic character, it had like G.I. Joe's. G.I. Joe's, I feel, should have had like a double hinge on the elbows. Characters like The Simpsons, obviously, it's going to be still a little bit harder to to pull off a excellent pose with Mr. Burns, just because, again, he's only got a single hinge. But like that single hinge also allows the forearm to rotate back and forth. The hands do, of course, rotate all the way around. Upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. The legs do split, but they only split so far because the jacket goes so low. The legs only go that far, unfortunately, and that far back. I mean, there's really no way to get around that just because of the design of the character. His jacket naturally is this long anyways in the series. You had to carry that over as well to the figure. They probably could have put splits on the side, but then that would ruin the look of the jacket. I guess at the end of it, I would choose the design of the character over the the functionality of the articulation. So again, like he only is really able to do that. You move forward and back on the legs. That's about it. He does have single hinges again on the knees, but I noticed again on mine, they're super, super tight. Again, comparing it, we just dropped the head, comparing it to the Devil Flanders we looked at not too long ago. You know my feelings when it comes to Devil Flanders, that I do really feel like that figure, boy, has some of the worst, not just on Simpsons, not just on Super 7, but I feel like of all the figures that we looked at on this channel, it has probably one of the worst articulation ever. We also, of course, if you saw the review, thank you for that. But yeah, really tight on the knees here for Mr. Burns. And then, of course, for his ankles, they move up and down this way. And there's a nice little ankle rocker there as well. Overall, though, I'm glad to see that we've got ourselves Mr. Burns. I mean, even if the line is coming near to the end, Mr. Burns certainly would be one of those notable characters that if you were to do a lineup of Simpsons characters, Mr. Burns, for me at least, would be pretty high on that list. Also really high on that list would also be Sideshow Bob, but considering now that the line is going to be dying off any time now, the likelihood of ever getting out Sideshow Bob is going to be, well, it's never going to happen. Mr. Burns does look good, though. I still, though, have to kind of question some of the choices that they made. I mean, obviously, if you're going to go with, like, just the OG classic look to Mr. Burns, I mean, with the buck teeth hanging down, I mean, it's a perfect-looking likeness of Mr. Burns, other than maybe, obviously, having little spots on the side of his head. I think they would have rathered if they had outlined those so that it would just stand out a little bit more. But I feel like, again, like whether you like this head sculpt or not, I just feel like that the heads are too identical to one another. I mean, they're literally looking like they're using the exact same mold other than just sculpting this one with blinking or with the eyes closed. I feel like instead, trade this one out for a smiling face. And then I think you would have had a much better Mr. Burns as a result of it. Wrapping up now the review for C. Montgomery Burns, I'm still baffled by the head sculpt that Super 7 chose for the figure. In fact, looking around at the other Super 7 Ultimate Simpsons figures that we've had looked at here on this channel, every one of the head sculpts that I can think of have all been very different from one another. Whether that's Moe, whether that's Krusty the Clown, even a Deep Space Homer have all had very unique head sculpts from one to the other. And yet, though, Montgomery Burns has two head sculpts that are almost identical other than just the way they've placed the eyes. With the eyes closed on one and the eyes open on the other, if not for that, I mean, they seem to be exactly the same heads. And you would think with enough source material that Super 7 would have had to research these figures, any one of them would have looked at that and said, well, there are episodes where Mr. Burns is smiling. Could we not have just included one of those head sculpts instead? Ultimately, though, I mean, again, just take it with a grain of salt. I just feel like of the three that we got, the one that I have right now is the best of the three, and ultimately just these other two are going to be going back into the tray. Just as a side note, though, the frustrations. I can't believe how awkward it was, how hard it was to get all of the accessories out of the tray from Montgomery Burns. I mean, even like the head sculpts alone, I had to really fight. I think I may have even damaged the tray trying to even get the head sculpts out. I don't even really like the idea of having to put them back in. I might just end up putting them in a bag. Why, again, one of my biggest worries, too, as I was fighting to get the heads out, was, am I going to be scraping the paint? Luckily, the tray didn't do it, but the neck putting it into his collar definitely did, and that's a bit of a bummer as well. As for his accessories, I do like they included the Bobo. I like the $1 trillion bill. And Blinky the three-eyed fish, although there's really no place to store it with the figure. I suppose I could have it displayed on his foot, or right around his feet when I have it on the shelf. What do you guys think, though, of Montgomery Burns? Let me know down below in the comments section. Are you a little also bummed by the fact that, of three heads that we get, two have to be so close to one another? And what other accessories would you have also included with Mr. Burns? Let me know down below. I did also find this one at Entertainment Earth, so if you guys have also wanted to pick this one up for yourself, even though we know the end is in sight, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I can already see it right now. Even though we are getting to the end of the Simpsons license for Super 7, my plan is still to pick up the remaining figures. Ralph is available right now over on their site, as well as Kang and Kodos. Definitely want to get my hands at least on Kang and Kodos. I mean, even as big of a disappointment as Devil Flanders ended up being, I do at least want to get all the Simpsons trios of horror-related characters, even though we only really have 3. If you guys did enjoy this video, I want to hit it with a like. If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing, and you certainly do want to stick around for more, we will, by the way, be looking at more Super 7 reviews. That's definitely going to be coming in the pipeline. In the meantime, though, if you guys want to go back and see all the other things I've looked at, popping up at the very end of this video, not only will be a Simpsons playlist, that's covering the territory not only of what we've gotten from Playmates, Bandai, I think also is in there as well, and also, of course, Super 7, but also there's a playlist at the adjacent corner. And that will also be all the Super 7 reviews that I've done. There's definitely a lot more videos coming your way, guys. So yes, hit the subscribe, turn on the bell notification. But the most important thing is that you're coming back here on a regular basis. Come stop by. I would say my door is always open, but literally it's just a figure of speech. I don't have my door always open. That would pretty much promote robbery. But definitely more coming your way, guys. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.